Perfect.
That looks good.
Black Dog Confessional is live.
How's it look on that? Good? Oh yeah, it looks good on there too.
Light. Alright, locked in. Make sure you share it on
IG. Or on your
yes, I'm gonna share it on Space Coast Podcast.
I try to use like bright colors so that people be like, oh, what the hell's going on? Oh, okay, they go live in 5. But you look great, Christopher.
Huh?
You look great. There you go. Much better.
Yeah.
I feel like this is like Hey everybody, welcome to episode 3 of the Black Dog Confessional. Today I'm here with, as usual, the Redbird, Chris Cardinal.
Hello, Steven.
Hello, Chris. And later on we'll be joined by a guest of ours, hopefully. Our guest Jamall had a death in the family today, and so he's trying to get here, but obviously understandable. Today we're here with Jesse, our producer as usual, Chris, me, and we're going to be talking about leadership today. I think what got me kind of focused on this topic, well, I've been focused on leadership for a long time, but the concepts and the rationale behind different people's thought processes on it has changed, but there's always certain books that always remain the same. You know, the seven habits of highly effective people, and you know, people have been using for years and years and years. But I can tell you that one of the things that has really kind of got me paying attention was the most recent midterm elections. We had a race over in Orange County that was kind of, just a shocker. Basically, you had a guy running as a Democratic candidate who was a criminal. He'd been arrested several times. He was running for sheriff, and he was running against a fairly established long-term chief. And when you looked at the end of it, when the results came out, the person who won, the former chief of OPD, he only won by like 45%, and the other guy had 41%. And to me, that was just shocking. I mean, here's a guy who has no qualifications to run for this position, but he wound up getting 41% of the vote. How does that even happen unless people are voting specifically party line?
Well, that's your answer right there. People just vote straight red or blue. They don't look at each candidate. They don't look at the differences between each one. They don't look at where's the stance of candidate A versus candidate B. They just look, all right, this one says REP, this one says DEM, that's who I'm voting for. And they just go straight down the ticket and vote that way.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note that in this particular election, Mina, who was running for sheriff, he was a no-party affiliate. He had switched his party after the 365-day mark, so he wasn't able to register as a Democrat because he had left the party of Republican to become a Democrat. So because he left within that window, he has to show up as a no-party affiliate. And just the whole thought process, that was kind of mind-boggling to me, that nobody obviously had even looked at their backgrounds. You know, and it got me thinking about the concepts of leadership and what are people looking for? What do people want? You know, from their leaders. I think what really hit me was you have a guy in John Mina who did a good job for OPD. He was very well known for his actions during the Pulse shooting and everything that surrounded that. And even despite all these specifically that one being such a high-profile incident, not only for this area but for the country, how does a guy not get more than 45% of the vote? And quite honestly, there was a third person that was in there that probably helped him because I think he took some of the votes away from the Democratic Party.
The third guy was a retired trooper, so also with law enforcement experience. I think he got like 20%.
Yeah.
No, that's not right. That math wouldn't work out. 14%, something like that. So, yeah, again, another retired law enforcement officer running for sheriff, and the guy who's got no law enforcement experience comes in second place with 41%. But that's an easy answer for you. I mean, again, that's just voting straight party line.
But what do we do to get away from that? I mean, that's kind of like where I'm going with the whole leadership mindset is.
Well, I think you're talking about two different things, because if you're going to talk about political elections and how do we get people away from voting straight down party line, that nothing you could ever do in leadership is going to do it. You could find whoever you consider to be the greatest leader of all time or a phenomenal leader, and if they have an R next to their name, the Democrats aren't going to vote for him. If they have a D next to their name, a good portion of Republicans aren't going to vote for him. It doesn't. That's just the state we're in now. It's unfortunate, and I don't know how you bring the ball back to the other side. Because right now, and I talk to people now going into the last midterms, and they said the same. You know, they tell me, well, I'm going to vote down this party line because that's what I am, and those people most likely fall in line with my same set of values on what I believe and things like that.
So let me ask you this: a set of values. Obviously, there are stereotypical Republican things, and there are stereotypical Democrat things, right? Like, what would make you the stereotypical Democrat or the stereotypical
Right.
Republican? Obviously, as we've seen times change, I think we're seeing a lot of people that are more moderate on both sides than they are extremes. And if that's true, wouldn't you think that at some point there may be Democratic people who do research that would vote Republican for specific Republican people if they actually do the research, and vice versa?
Well, yeah, but I think those are the people who actually pay attention to the elections and then research the candidates and actually make an educated vote on who they're voting for. Like, so on these last midterms, we had an opportunity to vote for Sebastian Inlet Water Community Service Manager Director Commission Board. I'm not real sure what it was, but I knew none of the people on there. I knew nothing about any of them. So when my wife and I were looking at the sample ballot and, okay, who are we going to vote for? I said, we're not going to vote for any of these people. She goes, well, we should vote for somebody. I said, we don't know anything about any of them. I'm not going to vote because one's got a certain letter behind their name. If I don't know what kind of character they are and what kind of person they are, I'm not going to just throw a vote at them. Because again, then you fall back into your sheriff's race in Orange County, where people just vote for somebody because they have the D next to their name, or nobody in that race had an R, but that's why people voted for him. So we chose not to vote in that particular race because we didn't know anyone affiliated with it.
You know what's funny is I actually talked to quite a few people that had no idea that you didn't have to vote. Like you could skip one if you wanted to.
Right.
A lot of people were like, "No, I thought I had to fill in all the bubbles." I'm like, "No, it's not a test."
No, yeah. If you don't know who you think is the most qualified candidate in there, you shouldn't vote for somebody just because they fill in the blank. It's same thing with amendments. If you don't understand the full amendment, you definitely shouldn't vote for it just because you don't have to.
Well, now going back to leadership, and I know you're right. We can look at leadership in different ways. There's personal leadership. Like my mentality for personal leadership is act as if. Act as if that's the role I'm going for. Act as if that's the position I want to be, or that's where I'm going in my existence. There's a whole theory back on that whole process of act as if. That's personal mentality, and then you have the teamwork mentality, which I kind of go by this whole bee theory, which a queen needs a hive to thrive. If the queen doesn't have the hive, then it's going to fall apart, right? You're never going to get what you need done. But there's quite a few people that realistically the mindset on leadership of where we're at as a country is what they perceive as leadership in general. Like they believe that their leadership of the country or their leadership of their community is the president, is the county commissioner, is this. But realistically, leadership is every single person that's in this room if it wants to be. It's all taking that position in life. But say you're a good guy. You do good things.
I've been known to do that.
You've been known to do some decent stuff. You hang out with me. I'll accept that.
Yeah.
That's the lower end of your good
my
deeds.
Charity.
But, let's look at, say, Chris Cardinal decides he wants to run for county commission one day. So Chris Cardinal goes to run for county commission. Obviously, you've got a good background. You got a good this, got a good that. What would keep somebody who's a good person from running? And I think we can go back to Colin Powell. Colin Powell, in my opinion, probably would have been the first black president, in my opinion. But what happened with Colin Powell was he said, I don't want to put my family through that. And this is before a day of social media,
right,
blogging, and all that. How do we get good quality candidates, good quality leaders to run?
That's a $1 million question, right? I mean, because you do nowadays you have to put yourself through so much scrutiny, and again with social media and with all that stuff, everything you've done and everything that's out there is going to be exploited. I mean, think about it. So you're same scenario, you put me through that. Whoever's running against me, they're going to go back and find just these podcasts and start to pick out little things that they think they can use against me. And for the record, I'm not running for county commission. I very much love my county commissioner. She's great. But
which is funny because you know who your county commissioner is, and there's quite a few people. And I also teach. Not only do work in law enforcement, but I also teach. And there are plenty of grown adults who vote, who have no idea who their county commissioner is, who their city council is. They have no idea.
But I think you and I are put in a different position to pay attention to it, because especially with county commission, because we work for the county. You know, although those aren't our bosses, they do help control our budget, and they do shape a lot of the stuff that goes on within the county. So you and I are kind of tied into that a little bit more to pay attention to it. I can tell you, if I didn't work for the county, I probably wouldn't pay a whole lot of concern to it. You know, I've just recently started paying attention to the city council in the city I live in. You know, they've made some pretty big changes. We'll see how all that plans out. But I don't know. You have to get somebody to do that. They have to think the reward outweighs the nonsense they're going to have to go through. Obviously, depending on what they're going through. I mean, if you're looking at a small city commission race, you know, it's probably not going to be that bad. But you start wanting to move your way up the ranks, I mean, it's going to get pretty gnarly on the stuff that could come out, the things that could be said, you know. And do you want to deal with that for essentially a part-time gig? I mean,
Yeah, no, I mean, you're right. I mean, county commissioners are part-time gigs.
Right. Most city commissioners are, you know, outside of a mayor, you know, and high elected officials, they're part-time jobs that honestly, do they even get, how much credit do they get for the good stuff? You only hear when bad things go on, everybody blames them.
Absolutely. We say it at work all the time. You can do 10 good things, but you do one bad thing, and that's what they're going to remember for a while, not those 10 good things.
Right.
I think it's funny because, you know, probably the number one time when you bring it up in class that people will talk about their county commissioner or their city council or whatever it is when something affects them is when they care.
Right.
And I think one of the biggest ones was, I remember there were potholes on Babcock Street. Nobody cared about anything else that was going on, but there were potholes on Babcock Street, and they wanted them fixed because that affected them.
Right.
You know, and if you were living in down a side street in Palm Bay and you had potholes in your street, you'd be like, why isn't Road and Bridge fixing this? Where are they at? Where's county works at? You know, or city works, however it works for you. But that's when people start to care. You know, a few years ago, they went into the debate over the transgender bathroom thing. I don't think anybody knew who was on the school board other than the people who were close to the school board.
Right.
Until that topic came up. And then that place was packed out. You know, and my thought process on the leadership aspect is, yes, I understand that we as individuals, Jesse goes to work every day, you go to work every day, I go to work every day. But how do we get people involved in their community to help develop their leadership, or at least know who their leadership is? Because the city council makes decisions, but if nobody shows up to the council meetings to give them input, then their decisions are being based upon those people in the room.
Right.
How do we get people to be involved? And is that a leadership that's a fault of people in elected positions, or is it a fault of not getting people engaged, or is it just something that's almost too big?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's just kind of spiraled out now, or are you right? Are things too big? Is the county too big that people don't want to go to county commission meetings? Is the city too big? You know, most of the cities around here that they don't go. I think if you go to a smaller city, you know, one of the little beachside towns or something like that, they probably get a better turnout at their city council meetings than, say, a larger city, Palm Bay or Melbourne, because those people, it's a much more intimate setting. People are more vocal, and they have the ability to actually do what they perceive as affect change. You know, I think a lot of people don't. Same thing with just regular voting. You know, people don't think their one vote counts, so they don't even bother going and voting. So they don't think their one voice counts, so they don't go down to the city council and say, "Hey, look, this is what I think the city should be doing. We should add in this store. No, we shouldn't get this store. Or, yes, we should approve this."
Which has been a big thing on what a recent. I think Dollar General was going up.
Oh yeah.
And everybody was like, we don't want another. Was that Palm Bay?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's my neighborhood.
Oh, well, then
Yeah.
I bet you don't want a Dollar General.
I did not want a Dollar General. It's not that I have anything against Dollar General. It's just I didn't want a commercial retail store in the middle of a neighborhood.
And that goes back to...
On a road that's already kind of falling apart. It needs some work. It's not going to be able to handle the infrastructure, the amount of people that are going to go in and out of there. And then... Also, once you build that store, well, now the rest of the area that's zoned for commercial is just going to develop that quickly as well. And can the road handle it? Can the city handle it? And are they forecasting out to do that?
So you're focused on infrastructure and the mindset around that with that.
Listen, I don't mind having a Dollar General that close would be great. My kids would love it, and being able to just go up to the store whenever I need something real fast would be nice. But the infrastructure is not there to support it. And again, you're putting it dead smack in the middle of 300 or 400 home community, you know, so it just doesn't fit in there. And but then you go back to the fact that planning and zoning recommended to the city commission, hey, no, because they wanted 5,000 square foot, or the lot zoned for 5,000 square foot. They wanted 9,100 square foot. Planning and zoning said, no, we don't recommend that we allow the variance to go up to 9,100 square foot. It goes to city commission. City commission says, oh well, and they go ahead and vote it through. So now you fall into, you want to get people engaged. Well, they did. They organized a big meeting to talk about it, talk to the developers. Then the residents go to the planning and zoning board. They sit there and talk until the wee hours of the morning about why they don't believe it should come. And then the planning and zoning board agrees not to recommend the variance. It goes to city commission. Again, same people go, big group. I mean, standing room only. People are standing outside waiting to talk. They go in. They all say their piece. Planning and zoning says we don't recommend it. And then in a 3-2 vote, it still gets passed. So at that point, then how do you engage the city? How do you engage your residents? You know, they're not going to want to come. They don't feel like their voice is being heard. Why are they going to show up again?
Gotcha. All right, we'll be right back after break. We're going to pick up on that because that's a really good point.
I know.
Make sure you check out Space Cowboy Justice with your hosts, Blake Stewart and Paul Daly. We're going to be talking about interesting legal issues in the entertainment industry and everything geek. If you're into Star Wars, Star Trek, Lord of the Rings, comic books, we're talking about it. Coming at you from the Space Coast Podcast Studios.
Jesse, have you ever wondered what is the best way to interview applicants for your open position so you have the best chance of hiring a keeper?
All the time.
Well, I talk to managers every day, Jesse, that use their gut instinct to make a hire. Sometimes that works out, but more times than not, it can lead to a bad hire. Replacing a poor hire can be expensive and hurt morale. One of our most popular service offerings at HR Office Savers is teaching employers how to be better interviewers. Improved interviewing techniques lead to better hiring, which leads to better employee retention, which leads to less turnover and more profit. Contact me today to find out how you can learn to be a better interviewer. I can be reached online at www.hrofficesavers.com or by phone 928-308-4506. Again, that's 928-308-4506. 928-308-4506.
You're listening to the Space Coast Podcast Network. If you'd like to be featured as a guest or sponsor or even host your own show, please email us at spacecoastpodcast@hotmail.com. That is spacecoastpodcast@hotmail.com. Space Coast Podcast. Talk hard.
All right, we are back. So, Christopher.
Sorry, I was looking to see who Florida and UCF are playing in the bowls.
No. So we left off with you bringing up a good point about people not feeling like what their input is valid or
Right.
being taken seriously. And that is an issue. That's kind of like the leadership concept that we're going with here.
Right.
Like, obviously, you want to feel involved. If you don't feel involved, you lose interest, right?
Right.
So you have a bunch of people who continually show up that are always going to show up. There is that group of 5 that are always going to be there.
Right,
They're
there's-
always going to have something to say. They're going to fill out a card. They're going to talk. They don't mind. But then there's other people that continually show up and they just feel like, why do I keep complaining? Red tape or whatever it is. Because there's certain things that people want taken care of, but by the time they go through the voting process and they do this and they do that, and I think a good one we could talk about was the murals in Melbourne, specifically the one that was on O'Galley Boulevard that the furniture shop across the street was not happy with. Originally that went to get approved. The original design was approved, but then the design that went on the wall wasn't exactly like that. Obviously, it was art, so it was fluid. The people complained. It went back again, and now this has been going on and off for, gosh, it's got to be a year, if not longer, that this has been going back and forth. The people are discussing it. A bunch of people were turning out to the meetings, people speaking on behalf of the mural. The people at the furniture store were trying to get a petition signed and trying to get it taken down, and other people that didn't agree with it. And it was a discussion on freedom of speech and freedom of art, freedom of expression, all these things. But this has been an ongoing process, and I think there's a lot of people that, after a while, they get to the mentality of, between working, raising my kids, doing everything I got to do I really want to go to this county commission meeting tonight, or do I really want to go to the city council meeting? Because I go there all the time and they never listen to me anyway. How do we get people engaged to a point where it's progress?
Yeah, I think you have to be able to explain to them if you want to take it back to leadership, if you're looking for input from the people who work for you or work with you, however you want to say it, if I say, hey, look, Steve and Jesse, this is my idea. What do you guys think? Or this is what we want to do, and you both give suggestions, and I don't go with either one of them, I better have a good reason or be able to explain it to you as to why. Okay, look, Steve, your idea was great. Here's why we're not going to do that. Jesse, your idea was great. Here's why we're not going to do that. If you give me suggestions and I just go, no, screw off, I'm not doing yours, eventually we'll get to the point where you say, well, I'm not going to give him any suggestions anymore. He asked, but he doesn't listen. But if you can give feedback and say, this is why I didn't do it, or why I went with Jesse's and not with Steve, then the person feels like at least you're paying attention, there's buyback, and there's room for growth. And then eventually, if you pay attention to why I've told you I didn't go with what you went with, you may come up with the idea, and we can go, dude, that's awesome. Let's roll with that one. That's way better than what even I had thought of. I don't know how you do that in a city or county commission to be able to say, hey, look, but if they fall back and start explaining, look, I understand you guys didn't want whatever this is why we're doing it this way, and they can explain it, you'll probably get some better feedback from people or buy-in in future things. You're still going to get the people who go, well, piss off, you didn't listen to me, and they're going to walk out and never come back.
No, I agree. How do you think, obviously this country is pretty split right now. Is there a way that, and this is a huge question, is there a way that a political candidate could win, I'll throw it low, 65% of the country's support?
I think what we have to see is at some point a third party. There has to be a rise of not even a libertarian or not a green party, nothing like that. Maybe a libertarian might be the best way to go, but for that to happen, you're going to have to see a third party candidate, somebody who can actually split the difference and say, look, I understand some good points that the Democrats have, I understand some good points that Republicans have, and I'm going to run that way. And at that point, yeah, you could grab 20% of the Dems, 20% of the Republicans, and then the other people who have already sat in the middle, that would be your other 45% that could fill in. It's getting that person to get that voice. It's so hard, especially on a massive scale when you start talking president, governor, anything like that, to get to the point where your voice can be heard, to get on a stage in a debate. To get a libertarian or a third party candidate on a stage for a debate, they've got to have, and I don't know the numbers, but a certain percentage of polling to get on the stage, and it's so hard for them to get up there because they're not getting the recognition because they don't have the big money backing from the big two. The closest you're going to get is when you get a big time, when you get like a Ross Perot who's just, well, I'm a billionaire, I have a lot of money, I'm going to spend my own money, and I'm going to shove myself down everyone's face. He can get out there and get it. But other than that, it's very hard to even get that progress to get on there. They had one, Gary Johnson, I think was his name. Yeah. And he had a good run. He was working his way up as a libertarian candidate. He screwed up not knowing some city that over in Syria that they were having a problem with, and then when he did that, both the Republicans and Democrats jumped on him. His numbers went down. You never saw him on a stage with Donald and Hillary. So it's very hard, but that would be the only way. You will never get, I don't think, ever get a Republican president elected official, a Democratic elected official, and president or any position, we're going to see 65% of the community supporting them.
Well, it's funny that you brought that up.
On that big of a stage.
Yeah.
You might get it, again, in a local mayor's race, something like that. You might get something. But once you start getting statewide, I won't even say statewide because, you go to New York and Cuomo wins the governorship there by a landslide every year. But that's because he's got the money to throw it out there. Up there, though, they had another guy that was running on a third-party ticket. Larry Sharp, I think was his name. And he had some really good ideas, some really good things that could have come forward. Again, couldn't get on any debate stage with anybody to actually sit down with someone and go, look, here's what I believe and here's why I think you're wrong, and let's talk about it. But once you start getting nationalized, it's not going to happen.
I was reading this thing the other day where they were talking about how one of the biggest movements right now are people are switching from parties to either registering independent, no party affiliate, or however you want to put it. And that's kind of like the biggest trend because there is people who don't agree with both sides. But most of the people that are running in that middle ground, that are running that NPA or independent, however you want to look at it, they don't like big money politics. Right. They don't like big money lobbyists. Even the ones that were Democratic weren't a fan of Hillary's taking money after money after money from people that they didn't agree with in the past. Right. And same on the other side with the Republicans. It's a long time politics has been a money game. I think we can all agree that there's a lot of money and influence that goes along with that, with lobbyists and how it rolls.
Yeah, it just costs money. Look how much it costs just to win a local county race in Brevard County. It's an expensive game to do. So, yeah, I don't know the answer. It's hard.
It's hard. But here we are. I think we see a lot of people, particularly this election and this presidency, there has been a lot of vocal people. People who had never talked about politics before in their life are all of a sudden like experts on politics. If you don't believe it, just read all the blogs, right? Everybody posts something every single day. You can't check your news without seeing one bad thing or one good thing. It just seems like everybody's fighting on whatever side they want to fight on.
But is that why we're seeing that now? Has it kind of been that way and we just didn't have access to it? But now because of things like social media and anybody can set up their own stuff, anyone can have a voice and throw something out there, and maybe somebody will like it, maybe somebody won't. They can engage people, but everyone can throw it out there now. And you've seen that over the last 2 years he's been president, the 8 years before under Obama, and then 4 or 5 years under Bush. But prior to that, there wasn't. You got your news from actually watching whatever news channel.
But most people think about.
Look, idiots like us have our own podcast now that we can come on here and talk about.
Absolutely. Thank God for media.
Clearly, it's open to anybody.
Absolutely, but you bring up a good point with the whole social media aspect of it. Before that, there was no real format unless you did watch TV.
Right.
Most of the people, if the news came on, they were changing the channel. But now, because of Facebook and 30-second messages on Twitter or however you want to do it, you can kind of scroll through and get a snapshot of all sorts of things going on. If I'm passionate about something, you're like, well, Steve's passionate about it, I'm going to be passionate about it too. And like everybody kind of jumps on if they see one of their friends. It becomes that close network. There's an old political thing where for every bumper sticker, it has a reach of 7. For every t-shirt, there's a reach of 7. So like if Jesse walks in wearing a Chris Cardinal for whatever, that's going to have a reach of 7, you know? And so that's where the money comes in because everybody wants to buy shirts, everybody wants to buy bumper stickers, everybody wants to buy ads. Then there's branding and everything on top of that because, we have to make Chris's face known across the county,
We should probably pick somebody else's face.
Exactly. Definitely. But, we look at but is that leadership or is that?
No.
That's just as branding. It's more marketing than it is
right.
leadership. So then we look at how do we get back to the original question of how do we get quality candidates? And that's really hard because, like you said before, there's a lot of people who probably would do a great job, but aren't willing to let their family be invaded or whatever. We can look at different political candidates over the past 3 or 4 years. If anything, probably the most recognizable recently was the Kavanaugh hearing. And like I said, we can go back, and I put it out there every single time. I was not there 30 years ago. I have no idea what happened. Whether it's true or untrue, I don't know. But what's to keep people from using knowledge, maybe not even bad knowledge, just any knowledge? Say me and Chris go back 10 years. And I can remember that Chris and I were on a camping trip sometime, and I can make whatever I want up.
Right.
Because I have a basic amount of knowledge.
Are you accusing me of something, Steven?
Not yet, Chris. Wait for you to run for political office, and then at that point, I'll be taking 10% of whatever. But at that point, we'll discuss it behind closed doors.
Can we put a disclaimer at the end of this that I'm not running for political office? I don't.
Chris is not running for political office. I am using Chris as an example because he is what's in front of me. If he wants me to change to Jesse, we could do that.
That's fine.
But look, Jesse just said no. He's not running for anything either. But what keeps people from doing that? And with the use of social media, you could make something believable.
Oh yeah. Well, they've got. Between social media now and Photoshop, and they've got ways now of taking, speeches that people have done, and they can clip all the music, or not the music, the words out of them, and make it sound like it's a different speech that they've given altogether. That could be a 180 from what their stance is, or something even worse.
Shoot, we've seen how many videos where they have Obama singing songs from all of his speeches. Yeah, you can do it. There are ways. The question is, we still go back to, are we going to get away from the point where people are going to want to run for office and they're going to want to just be leaders in their community because they're afraid of that?
No, because you'll always still have people who will do it.
But are they the people you want?
That's the problem. Right. You're always going to have people who crave that, either whether it's to be a leader or the power that comes involved with whatever elected spot they have.
Gotcha. Okay, we'll touch more on that as soon as we get back from our break.
The Space Coast Podcast Network. If you'd like to be featured as a guest or sponsor or even host your own show, please email us at spacecoastpodcast@hotmail.com. That is spacecoastpodcast@hotmail.com.
Space Coast Podcast. Talk hard.
Well, there's the X. I guess I'll sign right here.
Stop! Did you even read it?
No, I usually don't.
How many pages is that?
Like 20?
You could be giving away your firstborn son in that contract.
That's a pretty good point. I don't want to do that.
Or that's a lease, right? You could be giving your landlord rights to have their Fat Uncle Joe come and use your coffee maker whenever they want.
Uncle Joe's fine, but not Fat Uncle Joe.
Yeah, not that one.
Well, this is a lot of legal information. I don't really know it. Who could I go for this?
Well, that's exactly why we have Blake Stewart at Stewart Law. He specializes in business, contracts, and construction law, and he has negotiated low prices for contract reviews, just for cases like this. Check him out on Facebook, Stewart Law CS.
Or on the web at stewartlawcs.com.
Or give me a call at 321-541-6845. Make sure you check out Space Cowboy Justice with your hosts, Blake Stewart and Paul Daly. We're going to be talking about interesting legal issues in the entertainment industry and everything geek. If you're into Star Wars, Star Trek, Lord of the Rings, comic books, we're talking about it. Coming at you from the Space Coast Podcast Studios.
All right, in the studio, breaking news. This guy literally just broke down the door. He's got incredible news. His name is John Adams with the Fix Therapy. John, what's so important? What's going on?
Well, we've got some exciting stuff to talk about.
Well, tell me, what do you have to share?
Well, I've got a brand new podcast coming to you called the Live Life Aware, where we're going to be discussing all kinds of fun topics like biohacking,
whoa,
Yes. We're going to be talking about integrated medicine.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to be talking about some really new hot topics in Florida with medical marijuana and CBD.
I see. Well, that sounds exciting. So what else can the listener expect?
Well, fun facts of the body. Did you know that one red blood cell carries 1 billion oxygen molecules?
That's a lot. I had no idea.
Yeah, so if you looked up into the night sky,
right,
you could take every little star and put them on one red blood cell.
Oh my gosh, that's incredible. So all kinds of trivia, surprise guests, and things that you're not going to hear about just hanging out in your family practitioner's doctor's office.
Absolutely. We're going to be talking about all the stuff you're not listening or hearing from maybe your general practitioner.
Amazing. All right. Thanks so much, John. Live Life Aware, guys, coming soon from the Space Coast Podcast Studios.
All right, we are back. All right, Redbird, you left off on a good point.
I forgot it.
This is you're starting to lose it in your old age.
I know.
You hit it.
I start taking notes.
So anyway, talking on leadership points and trying to, get quality candidates to run, and not only that, quality candidates to lead in the community. I think we ended off with the whole. There's always going to be that guy that's going to run, but the question is that going to be the person we want? And what are we going to do as a community? I mean, I think a lot of people don't realize that there's a lot of decisions made at the low level, whether it be say low level, but I mean like politically wise, as far as local government rather than state government or national government.
Well, I think you just hit it right there. Is people don't realize that, right? I mean, if you look at the voter turnouts for when you have a national election, when you have the president. So 2 years ago, they run. Look at the voter turnout then, and then look at what you just had at the midterms. I mean, the numbers are drastically smaller. For some reason, people seem to think that the federal government controls and has the ability to affect them more than their local government does, when that's just not the case. I mean, clearly, your city commission, your county commission, your mayors, your sheriffs, your elected officials locally control everything way more than a decision that the county commission makes or your city commission, if you live in the city, is going to affect you more than almost anything right now that the president is going to sign in or that a senator is going to go forth and put a bill forward on. In the long run, they may, and every now and then you're going to get a big healthcare thing or an immigration thing if you have family that's dealing with that. Things like that may directly affect you, but for the most part, the decisions that they make, they don't affect on the same level as, like I said, your local government. But people don't recognize that. And I don't know if it's because the commercials get bigger when the presidents are running, when there's a national election like that, then, other than signs, I don't remember seeing any commercials for any of the local elections that just went on. Now, granted, I live in the south end of the county, so we didn't have a county commission opening, but we did have 2 city commissioners in the city I live in. We did have some other things. So you don't see any TV ads for that sort of thing. So is that what draws people out? That they go, oh, I gotta go do this? I don't know. I know the problem is that people don't look at the local elections nearly at the same level that they do national elections.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think people realize how much the local elections can affect all sorts of your public safety. Obviously, depending on what your county commission is or your city council is, how that affects budgets. I don't think people realize that how road and bridge affects their area. And there's all sorts of positions. I mean, I think we could sit back and discuss the Indian River Lagoon for hours and hours and hours. But I don't think a lot of people realized what the issues were going on there for so long until all of a sudden everybody's like, well, hey, we're doing was it half-cent tax?
Right, half-cent sales tax.
To try and fix it. But nobody realized this is millions upon millions and millions of dollars in tourism. And I mean, we've lost all of our fisheries because of this. And there's all sorts of things that go into just local county politics that, make you think. I mean, there's state representatives that when stuff started to happen with the Indian River Lagoon, they were like, oh, I did a tour of the Indian River Lagoon and it is very bad. You're our representative.
Right.
That's something you should know. That's something, it's been going on for 30 years. How are you going to show up and stand on the side and be like, yes, this does not look good? Yeah, no shit.
Well, that was one of the things I liked about this last election is, I every now and then enjoy fishing. And so that's the majority of the things I follow on social media. And there was a lot of movement for don't vote blue, don't vote red, vote water. Look at, in whatever your local elections are, who is supporting fixing, whether it's the IRL, whether it's Lake O. The water in Florida right now is crappy all over the place, except for in the beautiful Florida Keys. It's always great down there. But everywhere else, it's garbage. So who's going to fix that? And if that's what your main concern is, you need to look and say, all right, does the guy or girl who's running for Republican, are they going to do things that I want to fix it? Or is the guy or girl that's running for Democrat going to do the things I think they should do to fix it? And vote that way. Don't vote the R or D, And so there was a big movement for vote water. I don't know how well it worked. Most of that was down south because they're trying to open up the dam and make the water flow south again the way it did forever. So I haven't really followed it too much from there. Plus, I don't think you'll see things really unfolding for a while. But you can take that back to, even just the water. The other problem then is now you have state and federal fighting back and forth. You've got at the time the governor saying it's a federal issue and they should fix it, and then you've got the federal government saying it's a state issue, no, they should fix it, and then those two race against each other for senator, and they blame the other one for the problem.
Oh, absolutely. Well, that's even if you wanted to look at the Bill Nelson Rick Scott race, I mean, there were people that aren't a fan of Rick Scott. That was really it. They didn't really care about Nelson. They just weren't a fan of Rick Scott. But what people didn't realize was that's a vote in the Senate. Like if you're a Republican or you're even a moderate where you could go both ways, or you're a libertarian, that's a Republican vote in the Senate.
Right.
It's not just his opinion anymore; it's a group opinion. And the same with the governor race with DeSantis and Gillum. I don't think a lot of people thought about this at the time, but there's 3 Florida Supreme Court justices that are going to be appointed under this. That's depending on who's.
I think most people didn't pay attention to that. I think what most people pay attention to, again, is
the R.
One's an R and one's a D. And because you can look at almost the exact votes that DeSantis got, the numbers, I mean, give or take a couple thousand, are pretty spot on with what Rick Scott got. And Gillum and Bill Nelson almost align. So it's almost, okay, well, I voted R, you voted R. Sorry, Jesse, you voted D. All right, I'll take it. I voted Democrat. Whatever, you know what I mean? And so you can see that, again, people just went straight down party lines. Look at almost every major vote over the midterms in Florida went to a Republican except for the agricultural commissioner. And even that was a really tight race. And that's odd, just because you would think everybody that voted R voted R. Maybe there people actually took a second and looked at it and said, okay, maybe I always screw up whether or not it's Fried or Freed, but maybe she's going to be a better agricultural commissioner. I think because of the water issues and some other stuff, people said, all right, the Republicans had their chance for the last 8 years. The water still sucks. Let's try the other side. I think that happens a lot too when you're talking about independent voters. They go, look at president races, but they, okay, Republicans had their shot for 8 years. I don't like where it's going now, so let's try the Dems for 8 years.
Yeah.
And let's go back to the Republicans.
No, I think we've seen that historically for a while, but we want to take it back to locally. There are a lot of good local leaders in here that, do a lot of charity stuff, do a lot of different things. And I see them all the time at different events, and it's usually the same crew that kind of rides with different charities. Like for me, dealing with St. Baldrick's, which is Children's Cancer Research, I usually see a lot of the same people at different events.
Right.
There's always the core 10% or whatever, and they're very passionate about it. And you're right. If there was an issue that came up that had to deal with children's cancer, they're probably going to be the first ones on the line, out there waving the signs and posting on Facebook. They're also going to have their reach of 7, or in some cases more, especially with social media. You can reach out and touch people. There's always the story that backs it too. Like when we had Josh last week, if there's something that had to do with PTSD or the Public Safety Act and all that, there would be things that I would probably vote for now, But, we look at our local leaders and we have to sit back and say, are we grooming them to be the next state rep? Are we grooming them to be the next governor? Are we grooming them to even go higher to U.S. Senate or Congress or however you want to go? Are we grooming them that way? And I think one of the things I was talking to somebody and they said, well, I don't understand why when this guy was here, we never had an issue with him as a county commissioner, but now that he's over here, now I see all these issues with him. Well, there was always that. You just never held him accountable at the county commission
Right.
level, so now they just took that motion forward. If you're not willing to hold your local politicians accountable, or ask for transparency, or different things along those lines, you're neglecting your community. How do you be a good leader when you're just Joe Average? And that's something we're going to touch on when we get back from break, and we'll be right back.
Jesse, have you ever wondered what is the best way to interview applicants for your open position so you have the best chance of hiring a keeper?
All the time.
Well, I talk to managers every day, Jesse, that use their gut instinct to make a hire. Sometimes that works out, but more times than not, it can lead to a bad hire. Replacing a poor hire can be expensive and hurt morale. One of our most popular service offerings at HR Office Savers is teaching employers how to be better interviewers. Improved interviewing techniques lead to better hiring, which leads to better employee retention, which leads to less turnover and more profit. Contact me today to find out how you can learn to be a better interviewer. I can be reached online at www.hrofficesavers.com or by phone 928-308-4506. Again, that's 928-308-4506. 928-308-4506.
A lot of people want to know what the paper clinic is. And honestly, the paper clinic is a lot of things. It's a collaborative space where you can come and bounce ideas off other professionals. You can get advice from professionals in the field. You can get legal advice, insurance advice, and you can be the expert. You can advise people as to things that you know about. But the paper clinic's a lot more than that. When the paper clinic works together, it becomes a one-stop shop for anybody who wants to start a business. You can walk right in one door of the paper clinic and you can get your business formed, you can get your business insured, you can get a tax plan, you can get marketing, and you can walk right out the other side of the paper clinic with a turnkey business. The Paper Clinic, big firm resources for the small business. Check us out on the web, thepaperclinic.com, or on Facebook at The Paper Clinic.
All right, we are back, but now we have a special guest with us. I'd like to welcome my buddy Jamall.
Let me hear you good.
What's up?
There you go.
All right, that's Jamall.
Can you make him do it a third time?
Yeah.
We are here right now with my buddy Jamall. We're talking about leadership. Jamall's been kind of keeping up to date with it. I met Jamall through teaching, and great guy, does lots of good stuff. And so what we've been talking about is all leadership stuff and leadership community. And I know you got some good input on that, so I'm gonna let you take a minute to go ahead.
Well, the topic, I guess, is leadership and community outreach, correct?
Yeah.
So I'm not gonna say it's an issue, but in my humble opinion, I just think that, as far as people that we consider leadership, they're only out there doing community outreach when it's convenient for them. You know what I'm saying? I mean, there's people like you who are out there, but the leadership people, they're only out there, man, when it's time for something to happen or when something major happens. I think that the community needs to see more of our leadership out there, not when the cameras are just rolling. You know what I mean? come out there on your own time. You know what I mean? That the community sees through that. You know what I mean? It's almost
yeah, don't focus on the photo op and
right,
just
exactly.
don't pop out when it's just election time.
Absolutely.
But,
that's my thing with it. Like, I'm gonna say this. We're going to the NFL. I'm gonna say something like Randy Moss. Randy Moss, they say
you're gonna lose Steve.
Well,
I'll follow with you. But
you're gonna
lose
Steve.
Vikings, right? They play for the Vikings.
Yes.
Look at that.
But what I'm saying is, though, he's probably one of the biggest philanthropists out there. But he never has a camera there.
Right.
Never. You know what I'm saying? So all I'm saying is with leadership, it can't just be the community going out there doing community outreach. We need leaders out there that are doing it on their own time, not just when it's convenient or when it's an agenda or.
Yeah, and I think some
camera,
people they do it when they're obviously getting ready to go for a position, and you're right. I do think people see through that. You know, one of the things that one particular candidate that I've liked, that I voted for, you know, was a person who decided to act as if, you know, and it was 6 years before this person was running for an elected position that they said, you know, if I want this position, I need to show the community I want this position, and got out there all the time. But since election has continued to do that. And yeah, sometimes it is, we've seen it across the board, it is that photo op. But we've also seen it once they get the handshake, and that goes with jobs.
Yes,
I mean, we see it all sorts of things. People get that official handshake, and they sign their name on that piece of paper, and then they're disappear for the next 4 years.
Absolutely.
You know, and you know, I think you're right. There's a lot of community aspects that we neglect, because when it's an issue, it's an issue. But if nobody's talking about it, then they're on to the next issue.
Absolutely,
you know.
Yep. And I got to say too, man, y'all some cool dudes, man. It's all right, man.
Ain't
You
bad.
know what I mean? Yeah. But anyways, yeah. But yeah, that's just my take on it, man. Is if we're gonna get the support of the people in our community, is that these leaders got to do a better job, man, of getting out there. And I'm not saying you got to get out there every day. Just get out there.
But see, if you do that, and I agree with you. So let's say all three of us are sitting on a commission board, and you're out there doing that all the time. Well, now the constituents are going to look at Steve and I and go, well, why the hell aren't you out there doing it? So now I have to. It will force everybody else to go do it, whether they want to or not. Because I have to keep up with you, because if I don't, then I'm going to lose those votes to you, or I'm going to lose my position to you, and so I have to now. So I agree.
Yes, sir.
I agree. If they're out there more doing that, and again, I think if you look around, we do see some that do it, and you see the other ones too. Absolutely, that as soon as they get there, you're sworn in, you're now elected official of whatever.
Do that again, man.
They're gone.
Right.
But you know,
I got baptized once.
But you know, it's funny when you bring that up. Right before we went to break, we talked about accountability and holding our people accountable. And if you do have that person who's always out there, and because I work for the man, I can say it. Sheriff Ivey is great as far as being transparent. He's always at different events. He's always at different things. But what I've also noticed is other people are now popping their heads out to these events that maybe before they didn't. And I can say, 15 years ago in politics in this area, there was a difference. There wasn't transparent. It wasn't get out there and do the stuff in the community. It wasn't until, I would say in the past 10 years that we've actually seen people really trying to get involved. I remember when it was like a big thing if the county commissioner showed up to an event. Everybody would be like, oh my gosh, county commissioner, whoever is going to be here. Now it's like, oh, the county commissioner is going to be here. And I think it makes it more personable. I think it makes it more, people feel a lot more comfortable for those people who are involved in local politics. If you're not involved in local politics, you're just like, oh, that's the county commissioner. Did you know that's the county commissioner? That's so-and-so, you know?
Right.
But for community programs that are looking for funding, that are looking for outreach, I mean, I think, Meals on Wheels, this last one, took a hit. Meals on Wheels is very important to the community with Aging Matters. And that was something that took a hit with grants, because it wound up being outside that scope. Obviously, it's still an organization that's going to get benefits, still going to get funding because it does do so good. But, how do we continue to keep, we were talking about how to get good people to run for office. I think we've talked about it in class before. Yeah. How do we get good people to run? And not just be, it is great that Jamall wants to come out and be that guy who's at every event for, community outreach for for football, since we were just talking about it. And you're running the PAL program and you're at every single event for PAL. But it also would help if you were County Commissioner Jamall Curry out there, right?
Right.
Because then that adds to it. How do we get that? I know a big thing people talk about are you on a board? What boards are you on? Are you on boards? You know, how do you get involved like that and to actually care about what you're doing? Me, Chris knows, and you know, I'm huge with water management as far as keeping the water clean, conservation. I'm big with all that because I live in Florida for a reason. It's warm. There's water. It's a beautiful thing to go out when Chris finally gets a boat one day, when his wife finally allows him to do it.
We'll see.
You know, I'll go out fishing with Chris, and, you know, we'll be able to look at, you know, edible fish, not being like, do I really want to eat this? It looks kind of weird. It's got 3 eyes. It looks like the fish from The Simpsons, you know? But, you know, how do we, how old are you now?
Well, I'm 41.
You're 41. I'm 40.
38. I'm the young guy.
You're the young guy in the group. No,
Well,
Jesse, are you
Jesse
the young
is.
guy? Oh, are you the old guy? Oh, you're the old guy. Well,
Man, don't be ashamed, man. Don't do the finger thing. He's just doing the finger thing, man. I don't want to say I'm 41. Man, say it. Say it with your chest.
No one's gonna hear me anyway.
Yeah, Jesse tries to stay quiet, so when we say something stupid, we're like, I don't know, man. I just run the video.
I just
run the
zoned
audio
out.
board.
I just zoned out. But, you know, how do we, you know, looking at you, you brought up a good point about people being involved. What other points do you think that would bring a good leader out?
I like what he said, man. Like, lead by example, man. If you're a person on the board, you're putting the pressure on everybody else if you're out there.
Right.
You know what I mean? I'm old school, military, boxed in, straight up and down, man. I do believe in attitude reflect leadership, and I do believe in leading by the example. And I haven't seen anything else to sway my opinion on that. And I believe when he was saying that, hey, man, even if that person doesn't want to, hey, it's happened to me. I've been a part of some stuff where I didn't want to do something, and then I sit there and see 2 cats over there doing it. I'm like, well, you know what? Let me get my behind out there too. Right. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So
if the boss is out there, if the leader's out there,
on,
I better
man.
be there.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, you know, my buddy Drew Dudley wrote a book, and it's called This Is Day One, and it's now a New York's bestseller. And I tell everybody, if you want to learn about the basic building blocks of leadership, it's a good book to pick up and read. And, you know, the whole theory behind This Is Day One is, obviously, when you start a job, that first day, you're super excited. This is the best day ever. I'm going to be doing this and doing this. Oh, I'm so excited. But as the days go on, that fades out. And Drew talks about how do you keep that mentality as this is day one. And it's hard. It's something very hard to do. But how do you keep it new? How do you keep it interesting? How do you stay motivated? And I think earlier in the podcast, Chris discussed, you know, people losing interest when they're not heard. How do we keep people motivated? And I think that falls back to not only the official leader, but the informal leader. That guy who people do see at all the events, and they know, hey, you know, and I will say, you know, the pictures on Facebook or whatever, yeah, you know, if you're running for a political office, that's a good thing to be at. But if you're not running for political office, it's a great way to inspire people to get involved. I'm a big focus on the family person. I think for a long time people got away from that. They started focusing on how my career is going to work, and I can tell you that I work in a law enforcement field where people get divorced all the time because they focused too much on the job and forgot about what they were doing at home. And I think that happens in tons of careers. I think we've seen it in businesses where people they have to get that next step. They have to get that next step because that's how they're going to make their money. And it's unfortunate, but how do we define leadership from the home to the workplace and to just life as a circle? You know, and I think that if we can find ourselves some leaders that are doing that, those would be great people that could move into political offices with the research and education, obviously. You know, we're at a point in our community right now where we see different opinions every time we turn on Facebook. I guarantee if Jesse loads up his Facebook right now, there'll be 16 different opinions. Some he'll agree with, some he won't. You know, I am a very open person as far as being open-minded and my thought processes on things. I think a lot of times if Jamall tells me something in 30 words or less, people read that and they can construe it however they want. They can perceive it however they want. And sometimes they can spin that into one thing or they can spin it into another. It's either positive or negative. And I can tell you there isn't a story out there. you could come and tell me, Jesse could tell me right now, I just had this baby, and post a picture of the baby, and I could spin that and be like, Jesse has world's ugliest baby, and like you can always spin something.
That wasn't
negative.
nice. Jesse, you'd have a very pretty baby.
You would have a very pretty baby. But but it's how we're going to perceive things. And Chris brought it up earlier about people does that person's passion for this outweigh what they might have to go through to get there? And I think you brought up the point about people being out there and being involved. I think if you're more out there and more involved and more transparent, that kind of allows people to say, this guy's been living this life, you know. I think he'll continue living this life because he led this life before he ever decided to enter into any form of politics.
Yeah, because people want to relate to you, man.
Yeah.
That's just what it is, you know what I mean? I can't sit there and be the guy that, makes, have a 10-figure salary and then come out there to a community where we're making, 50,000 and then show up every 4 years and expect that community to believe in what he's or she, get that correct, he or she.
I don't think any women listen to our podcast anyway, so you're good.
Your wife was watching, so that counts as one.
I think it was the daughter.
Oh, no, no, we getting down today, man. Look, I'm going to let everybody know. I'm going to send this thing out on my emails, everything. Trust me, we're going to have some views today.
But,
Trust me.
It's funny because, I've known you for a couple semesters now. There's one of the reasons why I had hit Jamall up to come on is because he's always very open to discussion. That's what this podcast is about. And, I noticed one of the things while we were talking in class that he definitely had a passion for what was happening, and being a good role model, a good leader. And I think that's what I think a lot of people want. I can tell you, and I've been involved with Little League Baseball, whether coaching, assistant coaching, or sitting in the bleachers. And one of the things that upsets me the most of youth age sports is how the parents act and what the kids are seeing on the field. When you're sitting in the bleachers and you have the parents screaming at other parents or screaming at the umpire on the field, I mean, that's a bad model. That's bad leadership. And I think we see a lot of that as politics have gone on. And whether, like I said, you don't have to be a politician, you could just be a Democrat or a Republican, and people are yelling at each other for the simplest things.
Yes.
And it's realistically, if you actually sat down and had a conversation about it, you could probably find a little compromise. You may never sway your vision totally one way or the other, but if you actually sat down and discussed it, we could probably still sit down and break bread, rather than blast each other with email hate.
Well, you would have to come into it with the open mind of willing to make a compromise. The problem that you see there though is you and I have different viewpoints, and rather than, okay, I'm going to listen to Steve's and maybe I can mold mine to it. No. This is my viewpoint, and nothing you're going to say is changing. I'll listen to you, but in my mind, it's going to stay the same.
Or even worse, they're just telling you basically you're wrong.
Right, yeah.
And it's like, no, look, these are just two different opinions.
Right.
You're not wrong. I'm not wrong. We just don't agree.
Right.
That's it.
No, and I mean, we've been there before. I mean, how many times can you sit down and you can discuss certain things where that person's mind is set? There's nothing I'm going to do to change Jesse's mind. And it doesn't mean that my opinion's invalid. Right. I mean, we live in a great country where we have freedom of speech and freedom of expression. And although Jesse may not agree with me, he has the right to not agree with me.
Absolutely. Right.
And that's one of the greatest things about this country is if you go to other countries and you don't agree with the opinion of the government, or you don't agree with the opinion of whatever it is, you could face death, you could face punishments, you could be exiled. There's all sorts of things. I mean, me and Chris talk about Scientology, and there's been, and it makes him shiver when he brings it up, but we've talked about all the Scientology and how Scientology works, because a lot of people don't realize that over in Clearwater, Florida, there's a big hub for Scientology, and that's where Chris has family at, and so we've had discussions about it. If you ever never watched Leah Remini after Scientology, it's a great thing to watch, because there's a lot that you don't really realize. But there are things that you could try and tell somebody, specifically in the whole Scientology aspect of it, where you could tell somebody this and they will never believe you. They would never believe you because that is not what has been told to them. Right. And I think we've discussed it before where, if Jesse is raised as a Christian and he is raised every day going to church or doing something with the church, that is what Jesse knows. Anything outside of that, if you were to say, Jesse, there is no God, Jesse would be like, absolutely wrong. You are 100% wrong. That's Jesse's opinion. That would be, it's not my opinion. I believe in God, but it could be somebody who's an atheist thought process, and that'll never sway. But as long as you keep an open mind, you can say, hey man, I hear what you're saying. We can have a discussion about it. But I know I'm never going to change your mind, and you're never going to change my mind. But at least we could sit here and have an open discussion. And I think that's where we fall apart in politics, is that people aren't willing to have the open discussion. It's we have a format. We have a stereotypical line of what we're going to preach. We're going to say it every single time. I'm a Republican. I'm anti this. I'm pro this. I'm that. And if I sway away from that, I'm going to lose these votes. So I have to stay hardlined on that. And that doesn't necessarily, I don't think that necessarily gives the person's opinion honestly and truly. That is what they have to say because that is what the party says, and I'm a conservative. Chris is a conservative,
Yeah. I mean, for voting purposes.
Yeah, for voting purposes. Yeah. But I mean, there are things that, I'm more liberal on the side of. Like, I don't care who marries who. That doesn't matter to me. That's, but there are people who I have talked to who are in the gay and lesbian community that have come to me and said, well, you're a Republican, so you must believe this. And I'm like, you're judging me.
Right.
That's not what I believe, but they automatically assume that you fall within those lines,
right.
And I think that, by opening dialogue, I think we're going to start to see better quality candidates come forward, but we have to get the candidate to want to run for the position. And as long as people are continually bashing people, it's going to be hard pressed to find somebody who lives a good life, who is very peaceful, who enjoys their time with their family or enjoys their job. Now they've gotten to a position where they're happy or they retired and they moved on, to find that person and say, hey, we want you to run for political office, because they're going to be like, I think I'm good, And so how do you do that? It's very hard.
It is. I don't know, man. I mean, I think we're all around the same age group, so I can pretty much, I think I can say that we all pretty much have thicker skin, you know what I mean? Because I can really care less what anybody thinks about me.
Right.
And the vibe that I'm getting in here, I think that you guys feel the same way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I think that's where we're at, because like you said, we have people that are going out there, but they're afraid to get bashed. You can't be afraid to get bashed,
right.
man. No one's going to look.
But it's a matter. But you have to look at it too. Is I don't care if I wanted to run for something. I really don't care what people say about me. But then, do I want to put that burden on my wife, my kids, my parents, my in-laws?
That's true. Yes.
That's so.
And then they dig up dirt and all this other stuff too. Because like me, I feel like in regular competition, if you and I are running for office, I'm not gonna go dig up dirt on you. You're not gonna dig up dirt. I'm willing to compete against you, man to man, to sit there and reach this community and see who gets the votes.
But how many people are going to do that?
Exactly.
That's the problem.
But,
so like you said,
so now,
right before you came in, we talked about that.
Yeah.
You're always going to have, because we're talking about, will become a point where nobody's going to run. Well, you're always going to have the people who want to run because they want that lead, they want that power.
Right.
They don't want to be a leader to be a leader. They want to be a leader for the power. And that's the person that then, so you and I say, okay, we're going to run for this elected spot. And we're going to run a clean campaign against each other. And it's just going to be you and me talking about the issues, and people can pick what side they want. But then all of a sudden you find out, no, I'm the dude that I want the power. So right before it, then I start dropping bombs on you that you didn't realize,
Right.
And
well, but even then, let's say you guys make that agreement. You guys shake hands. You're very civil in debates, all that stuff. But here's Jesse, who the third man, who doesn't even have anything to do with your campaign or your campaign.
Telling everybody he's 28 when he's 41.
Yeah, exactly. He's like, I'm 28 years old, and I'm,
or not just the third guy. Then you've got whatever letters behind our name while we're running. The people in your group now. Okay. Jamall's not going to throw him, but you know what? I will. I'll allow them. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so it's tough.
Yes,
I mean.
And that's what gets the news going. That's what gets the media going. So even we're running it smooth, they're not listening to us because we're boring.
Well, then,
you know what I mean?
Right. Then it comes out as Chris Cardinal's campaign said this.
Yes.
Or those or public interest groups that create whatever, and it's we're here. We were part of Chris Cardinal's Dogs Are Us, whatever you want to call it, and that's our committee name. And they come up and they do that, but then they start throwing out. You'll see the ad come up on TV, and it's not Chris Cardinal that endorses it; it's them doing it.
It's a pack. It's some sort of
exactly. And then you're calling Jamall, hey man, I did not say that. I did not do this. I'm telling those people to back off. Now Jamall's gonna sit back and be like, oh, do I believe him? I mean, is he playing a game? I hope he's being honest.
That's where you have to open. we talked about this right before we fired up this time, is that your word is strong.
Yeah.
But it does, again, now it's not going to stop Jamall's team from going, okay, Jamall's not going to do it, but guess what? I'm going to fire that one back, you know? So who knows? Before you quit, you said one of my favorite quotes of all time, and that's attitude reflects leadership. And I love that one. It's from one of my favorite movies of all time. Steve?
Remember the Titans?
Come on, man.
You didn't know?
I didn't know if he was going to know.
Is that a football movie?
It's a football movie, but it's a phenomenal leadership movie. If you've never watched that movie.
It has Denzel Washington, correct?
It does.
Then maybe I have watched it. I just want to throw you off like that. Yeah.
My bad,
see,
man.
Look at you. You judged me. You judged me in my hockey
Then who
knowledge.
said it to who?
I have no idea, bro. Seriously, like, I don't even watch movies. I watch documentaries all the time. That's all I watch.
Right. Well, before anyone calls me on it, Julia said it to Gary. So there you go.
Oh my gosh, you know their names.
Yes.
It is a great movie.
It is, man.
First off, it's a true story. It is a great story about leadership. It's a great story about a community coming together. And what you're talking about has to be one of the hardest times ever. I mean, you've got a white community with a black coach that now is going to come in there and take over the team. And how do you deal with this racial separation? And then all it takes is Gary to become friends with Julius. And like we were talking about, attitude reflects leadership. Yeah. The white guys started seeing Gary be friends with the black team, and almost everybody comes over.
Well, I think we can throw it in too. I mean, you bring up a good point about that community and being able to conquer a racial divide during a time when that was not the line crossed. Right. But we can go back to the 50s, and when Martin Luther King got arrested, it was Billy Graham that bonded him out of jail.
Right.
You know, and that was unheard of, and that was part of what started some of the biggest crusades where, you know, Martin Luther King and Billy Graham spoke together. You know, that was when Madison Square Garden was desegregated, and they basically said there will not be a white section and a black section. People will sit wherever they want. In a time where that was extremely unheard of, you know, but it took a relationship to be able to move that forward. I haven't seen that type of relationship in politics recently, you know, like, but I think it could happen. I mean, I think that you could sit down. I mean, you're always going to have your differences. And yeah, if Jamall gets up and says he's pro this, and I know that I'm against that, I can get up and be like, hey, Jamall, I hear your point. I am not for that. This is the reason why I'm not for that. And we can sit down and have a legitimate thing without me being like, well, obviously, Jamall is an uneducated human being, blah, 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 blah. You know, you don't have to take that route. And, I mean...
Actually, we don't have to discuss it. As soon as you say, hey, man, I don't agree with that, this is that. Cool.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, because that's your opinion. You know what I mean? When I was in the Air Force, man, I was thinking about this, man. I apologize, man. But when I was in the Air Force, man, we had this, we had to go to this Silver Flags. It's in Tyndall by Panama City. And this was almost I think this was maybe about 14, 15 years ago. And there was a gentleman, man, he was an Air Force member. I'm an Air Force member. And he was from another state. And I'm going to tell you right now, I didn't have conversation with him to be able to sit and say that he was racist or not. But I'm going to say this. He was not comfortable around people of color.
Yeah.
But I can tell you this. He wasn't comfortable around me, which made me uncomfortable around him. But they put us on the same crew, and we kicked so much butt out there, bro. And by the time it was over, me and this dude, I don't know his name to this day. We gave each other. We got to do this for the camera. You know what I mean? We gave each other down. It was like, man, hey man, it was a pleasure working with you, man. You too, man.
Right.
See you.
Yeah, no issues.
You know what I mean? You know what I mean?
Right.
Absolutely. So we were both uncomfortable, but we both understood there was a job that had to get done. We did that respectfully. We spoke to each other, communicated respectfully. And guess what? We didn't email each other. We didn't call each other. How you doing? Right. I don't know you. You know, if you out there, what's up, bro? But
yeah, but you're right.
But we did what we needed to do for the purpose, and then we got our butts out of it.
Absolutely. I can tell you, when I was young, I was 16 or 17, I worked with a white power skinhead. He actually had the tattoo on the back of his head. And we worked with a black dude. And we all were doing the same job. And one day I came in and I was like, bro, what are you doing? Sleep on the couch. I got kicked out of my family's house. You know, his mom had died and him and his dad had a big falling out. And he goes, yeah, me and my dad aren't staying there. The one dude that walked up to him and offered him a place to stay was the black dude. And at first the guy was like, nope, about 3 nights of sleeping on the back of a car and a piece of cardboard on the ground. He was like, all right, you know what, dude, they wound up being like best friends.
Right.
Dude grew his hair out, denounced all that stuff, but all it took was a sit down and a conversation and a need. And the guy had a need, and nobody else reached out to him but one dude.
Yeah.
And that's what really brought those two guys together. But it changed the perspective. And early on in my life, that was something that I recognized as, hey, this is unity, this is bond, you know, and that's what moves people forward. And, you know, we as a community, you can't have these Antifa people run around throwing bricks, getting in people's faces, because that's not productive. You can't have the alt-right doing whatever the alt-right does. You know, you can't have that. You have to have people who are willing to sit down and have a conversation and work up for what's better. You know, there is...
When you find those super leaders who are willing to do that, let me know.
Yeah.
We can put on pay-per-view and we can make a lot of money if they're actually going to do something and get something done.
Yes, sir.
But just let me know.
I know.
You took the words right out of my mouth, too. You know, I was waiting for him to stop. I was going to...
You guys are like...
right in,
you can't wait for Steve to stop because he won't. You just have to go.
There's a land
it's like
of
trying
utopia.
to merge onto the interstate. You just got to go because he ain't going to stop.
80 miles an hour.
I'm trying it. Everybody out there, you see my land of utopia. There it is. You know, it may be imaginary now, but one day I'm going to own an island or something. We're going to make that happen, you know? And then it'll just be me, Chris, and Jamall and Jesse. We'll just be there by ourselves. We'll be like, hey, you know, you guys
talking
good?
into mics, be the only one listening to it
Yeah,
anyway.
the only one listening to it. You know, as long as I can get reception to watch hockey, I'm good to go. You know, I'll get you football. You know,
yeah, man. Yeah.
Don't you shut your face about hockey. You've been to hockey games with me.
I've been to 2.
They were great, weren't they?
I enjoy football games better.
He only says that because he was at the UCF game yesterday, and now he's like,
And man, that was crazy.
It was a good game.
Did you work it?
Yeah.
Oh, you worked it. But, 25 in a row?
Yeah.
Worked it. What do you mean worked it?
We go over there and help security with them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, call me, man.
So,
all right, my tummy's rumbling, man. I got to get some food.
All right. So what we're going to do is, Jesse, if you will lead us out, we will say thank you to Jamall. We're going to have him back another day. Like I said, great conversation. This is why I bring him in the room. You guys be safe, and we will see you in 2 weeks.
Hey, love you, Mom. My mom passed away, so we got to say what's up.
Most definitely.